Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me. This is Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, your host on No Soundbites Allowed, and I'm happy to be back with you once again. And today I wanted to talk about something that I thought was very interesting, something that's important and in the news as we speak right now, and that is the fact that we're watching the Democratic Party essentially melt down according to some reports out there, but it's really not. It's not even close to that. What we're watching is the public being made aware of a reality that's going on, and it leaves me with a question, which will be the focus of this episode. And it's a very simple question, and I'm going to put it up right now, right at the very beginning. The question that I have is, for any Democrat who is elected, who is a candidate that is seeking to represent the Democratic Party, the leadership we're talking about here, not the rank and file members, the mom and pops, the students, and everyone else out there. No, I'm talking about the leadership, the people who are in charge of the Democratic Party, and I have to ask them, how do they have any credibility whatsoever? How can they pretend to have credibility when they speak on behalf of the Democratic Party? It's a really good question. It's a question that's so good, you don't have an answer for it. And that's kind of funny, I tend to believe. Now, you're going to say to me, Mike, well, why is it funny? How can you say that? What are you talking about? Well, it's actually quite simple and pretty direct, as a matter of fact. As of today, which is November 3rd, a couple of days before the November elections for 2017, an announcement by Donna Brazile, who is the acting head of the Democratic Party after Debbie Wasserman Schultz stepped down. She is saying that she's just become aware, and she has a strong belief that the Democratic Party basically used the public and, more importantly, manipulated the Democratic primaries in 2016 to ensure and guarantee that the Clintons, Hillary Clinton, would be able to run for president. This is old news. This is nothing new. This is not even close to new news. Everyone has already known this. But the fact is that the Democrats and the Democratic Party is acknowledging something that everyone knew already. If you paid attention to politics at all, then you knew this. This was news that came out in 2016. It's the reason why Debbie Wasserman Schultz stepped down from head and president of the DNC, because she got caught doing exactly what Donna Brazile and several others are now coming out to say. I think it's Senator Elizabeth Warren are coming out and saying now, oh my God, there may have been manipulation. We may have used the Democratic rank and file members, and we have abused them to guarantee that Hillary Clinton became president. And I have to ask, knowing this, and this is old news, and they're announcing it now and admitting it clearly now, one, where's the credibility that any Democrat could possibly have? And two, why are they doing this now? And those are two very important things. And I'm going to take this from the national level because it also filters down to the local level. And it affects people directly. And so that's important. This isn't just, the Democratic National Committee at the top levels, at the highest levels, they're acting on their own. This is a rogue action, totally separate of the rest of the party. No, it's not. No, it is not. They are showing the way. They are leading the path. They are clearing the path for the rest of the party to act in exactly the same manner. And that manner is, it doesn't matter what your constituents think, do as we say. That's it. And I have to believe, and I've said it before, the Democratic Party has now become, not the members, not the rank and file. There are people who are listening to this right now I would never consider to be part of this, even though they're Democrats. What I'm talking about are the leadership people, the people who are elected and who are guiding the direction of the Democratic Party in those leadership roles, in those roles as candidates, knowing what's going on. And I have to believe that they are right now going out there and they are doing Very simply, just say yes. That's what they're asking people.
Just say yes. We'll give you whatever you need. Do you need a house? Do you need some money? Do you need food? Do you have a need? The government will fill that need as long as you say yes and elect me. That's it. It's not much to ask for. You don't have to do much of anything. Just say yes and elect me as a Democrat, and I will take care of you. I will give you whatever it is you need.
That is the unspoken mantra of the Democratic Party at this time. This is the unspoken promise of the leadership of the Democratic Party to the public.
Just say yes, and we'll take care of it.
That's it. That's what I truly believe. And that's what I see. And that is what this is revealing. That as long as people said yes, as long as they didn't pay attention, as long as they didn't question the fact that Hillary Clinton would be the Democratic candidate, and that was because the leadership wanted it, regardless of what the rank and file members wanted. And as long as there wasn't a big uproar, they'll take care of the people. They're going to give you stuff. And it doesn't matter that the stuff they're going to give you is actually coming out of your own pocket. We're talking about taxes. It's coming out of the taxes that you pay. And it's just redistributed. It's reallocated by the government into the people they want to give it to in the way they want to give it to them. So it's your money, but it's coming back to you because the government decided to give it to you, because they're going to take care of you. They're going to help you. They're going to give you the things that you asked for as long as you said yes under Democrats. And if you didn't say yes under Democrats, well, essentially, screw you. If you said, no, I want to go with the Republicans, they don't care. Well, then you're on your own, and live with it and deal with it, because they really don't care about Republican issues. What's the last bipartisan bill that you can name that Democrats were on top of? And I would put that out to Republicans as well, although the biggest bills and the ones that have had the most impact on people's lives have been Democratic bills that have, and it's just 8 years of Obama. What we're dealing with now is the Obama administration legacy. It's not the Bush administration legacy, which happened to be 9, 10, 14 years ago. We're talking about the Obama administration that just finished. And we're talking about the last, 10 years of Democratic rule over the House. That's what we're dealing with. And they ask people to say yes. Just say yes, and we will take care of you. And that has a consequence. It has a lot of consequences. Not just because of what it means that they expect their constituents, their rank and file members, to be zombies. It's not that, because that's bad enough. It means that it also takes away your freedom, which is worse. Not only are you a zombie, you're a zombie without freedom. Not just the freedom of will, but the freedom of anything other than what they give you. Because when you say yes, you give it up. It's essentially a deal with the devil.
Here's my soul. Give me everything else I asked for.
That's the deal, in my impression. You may disagree. You may say, Mike, well, that's just unfair. That's not a good articulation of the argument. That's not seeing the whole picture. And I will be happy to discuss that, and I'm going to. But before I do that, we're going to take a quick break, and I'm going to come back, and we're going to deal with this on the national level and then on the local level, because we're seeing it in both places, and it is exactly the same steps, the exact same viewpoint. They're doing the same thing. This is the goal of the leadership of the Democratic Party, from the national level to the local level. This is what they think of their members, and this is where they think they should take the party. And I will come back and I will explain that in just one moment. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming back to No Soundbites Allowed with your host, the Dragon of the Southern Tier. That is me, Michael Vasquez. And let me explain where I left off. So I made an allegation, I made a statement, which was very simply, how can any Democrat who is elected or running as a candidate stand in front of the public and have any credibility? It's a strong statement, and I believe it's true. It's a true question that needs to be asked of them all, especially before we come up to the election, which will be on November 7th of 2017, and we need to ask them, how can you be credible? And the reason why I ask that is, let's go back in history a little bit. Not before we get to the news of today, let's go back in history a little bit to 2016. Not a long time, but in politics, where 30-second sound bites rule the day, and it is expected that the average American doesn't have a political memory that goes back 3 months. Something in 2016 might as well have happened in 1816 because they don't expect anyone to remember. And that's true of both parties. That's true of all politics today. No one expects anyone to remember something that happened 3 months ago. Only political junkies and those politicos like myself who are involved, who do political commentary, we remember things going back a long time. I remember things going back over a decade, actually 2 decades or more. But the average people, the people who are voting, no, they don't expect you to remember anything from 3 months or less, far, far less. They expect you to remember things from last week, and that's it. And that's why they give you 30-second slogans on a regular basis, because you're not expected to remember anything. Just a bullet point, and that's it. And that's a downfall of our entire political structure in the nation at this time. And that's for all parties. It's just insulting and wrong, and I'm upset by it because it actually violates everything this country is about. And the fact that people are not taking the time to actually go out there and know what the issues are. But I am deviating from my point. So I will stop that for a second and let's get back to the point, which is credibility. And as I said, this is going back to 2016. So very simply, in 2016, Hillary Clinton was in a primary battle with Senator Bernie Sanders. And as many of the Bernie Sanders supporters will tell you, and they did tell us, throughout 2016, he wasn't getting a fair shake. That the Democratic Party itself, not the Republicans, not the Republican candidates, not the Republican Party or anyone elected, Democrats themselves and the DNC, Democratic National Committee, was out there actively working against him to ensure that he could not become the next presidential nominee for their party. That's Democrats against Democrats, which is almost surprising. And they were making sure that Hillary Clinton would be the choice, the only choice that the public could ever possibly have. Whether they wanted that or not doesn't matter. Regardless of her history, all of the allegations behind her, which I believe are mostly true, regardless of all that. No, it was
Hillary Clinton is your choice. She's going to be your Democratic candidate. Period. And you'll be happy about it because you're a Democrat and you have to be. You have to be happy because you said yes, and therefore that's the only choice you get. When you said yes, we have control.
But in 2016, there were some reporters, not a lot, who actually decided to do their job and were busy being journalists and looking up what's going on and checking the facts and listening to the Bernie Sanders supporters and Bernie Sanders himself initially and said, what's going on here? And wouldn't you know, it was this little known, I can't call it a journalistic anything, but this one little site that you may have heard of called WikiLeaks. And WikiLeaks revealed that they had received information that said
The Democratic National Committee was actively pursuing a program to engineer the primary for Hillary Clinton, to disengage, disavow, and disempower Democrats, rank and file Democrats, from being able to have their votes matter in the choice of who would be the Democratic National Committee nominee for president of 2016.
Now, that was a big, big deal, and it had a lot of impact. If you don't remember, and most people may not because you're not expected to, but if you look at the Washington Times on Sunday, July 24th, 2016, it goes over it to an extent. And in that article from the Washington Times, and that article was titled, Wasserman Schultz Immediately Joins Clinton Campaign After Resignation. And in this article, they go into it in some detail, not a lot, but they mention that Debbie Wasserman Schultz had to resign from the Democratic Committee, basically in disgrace, even though nothing was mentioned why she was removed, although everyone understood it was because she had been caught by WikiLeaks, basically engineering and rigging the Democratic election. I don't care if you want to know about Russians. Here's the big deal. The Democratic Party of America, with Americans, rigged a primary against other Americans. They took away the will of others. I don't care if Russia was doing whatever they did. Stop first. The Democratic Party was working against Americans' free will and choice before the Russians ever got involved, and had nothing to do with them. If you want to be upset about how the 2016 election wound up in any way, shape, or form, start with the fact that Democrats disavowed, disempowered, and rigged the primaries. Start and stop there. There's your fundamental problem. And that's why Debbie Wasserman Schultz had to step down, because there was evidence, proof from WikiLeaks, a source that up until that moment, Democrats were loving and were saying it was the greatest thing, and Snowden has to be given a pardon, and Julian Assange had to be taken care of and be lauded because he had WikiLeaks and was providing so much information. Well, those same sources provided information that showed that Democrats were violating not just the law, not just the spirit of the law, but literally attacking and destroying the ability of Americans to make a free and honest choice in a presidential election. That had nothing to do with Russia. Those are all Americans involved. So when Debbie Wasserman Schultz stepped down because of this, she was immediately hired by the Clinton campaign to work for that campaign. Can you say that one hand is washing the other? Oh, how bad do we feel for Debbie Wasserman Schultz that she lost her position with the DNC and was instantly hired the same day by the Clinton campaign to continue to do what she was doing already, which is ensure that Clinton would be able to run as the nominee of the Democratic Party and to try and become president. Really? That's just, well, it's the worst of worst things you can do in politics. And that's in the article. Read it yourself. You can understand it for yourself. It's right there. That's the Washington Times that put that out in 2016. You don't have to believe me. Read the article. It's there. We know that at the top level, the Democratic National Committee was actively working against the rank and file members of their party and disavowing their points of view I personally thought that Bernie Sanders was the craziest socialist out there and that he's the worst choice you could possibly have. He's a socialist. He's a communist, actually. He's a self-avowed communist, which is antithetical to America and all of the things that the foundation of this nation and what made us great and makes us the leaders of the world. So the fact that I would have loved to actually see Bernie Sanders be running for president under the Democratic Party, it would, one, confirm and let everyone know how far the Democratic Party has gone from the values of America, but two, it would also show a landslide loss, in my opinion, because he's just a nut job. His views don't work. And as someone who's actually lived in a socialist, actually communist nation, I lived in Moscow, I can't see anyone ever, if they spent a minute in a socialist nation, they would never vote for him. But that's my point of view. That being said, let's move forward. And let's look at this a little more in depth. And it's important that Democrats disavowed, disenabled, and rigged a presidential primary. If they are willing to act on that level and expected not to get caught, and when they did get caught, they blew past it as if it didn't matter. They blew past it. Debbie Wasserman Schultz just went into the Clinton campaign. Clinton won the nomination, and she ran for president with Debbie Wasserman Schultz behind her. And they didn't blink an eye. And the news media let them. Did they report it? Of course. Like I said, the Washington Times, they put it out there. There were several who looked at WikiLeaks and found the report and found the emails proving that this was done. So let's fast forward a little bit. Now in 2017, in November of 2017, Donna Brazile, who is also alleged to have helped Hillary Clinton by giving her advanced notice of questions that were going to be asked during the debates in 2016. Let's ignore that for a moment, that was out there. But Donna Brazile is now coming out and saying, well, Hillary Clinton, I found out, and I just didn't believe it, that she was rigging the election. She was rigging the primary. She was disenabling the votes and disempowering fellow Democrats. How horrible. I just can't believe that she did that. Wait a minute, Debbie, you were there. Excuse me. Donna Brazile, you were there. You helped that process. You were right there with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So to say, oh, I didn't know and I have this belief now, we already have the proof. It's already a known fact. It was a known fact a year ago, more than a year ago. This is nothing new. To come out and say it now, why are you doing that? Because they're afraid of the midterm elections. That's why. Because since everyone knew it and everyone forgot about it, when it would come back up in 2018 for the midterm elections, and you know that the Republicans, people who are involved with politics, are going to say, hey, here's a headline about how Democrats did this to you. The only way to defeat that argument is to put it out and say, oh my God, I couldn't have possibly known. And you know what? Hillary Clinton has to fall on her sword. She's the bad guy because she was the only one involved. No one else could have possibly known besides Donna Brazile, who was involved with it, besides Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who ran the party and knew about it, besides all of the other leadership of the Democratic National Committee who knew about it. This is nothing new. You're talking about members of Congress and in the Senate that knew about this. It's endemic in the entire Democratic Party. And I'm not saying the Republicans are great, holy, golden standard, anything like that. That's not what this is about. This is about Democrats. This is what they did to their own party and the public. So there's no one else to talk about in this. Just Democrats and what they did to their own party. And they are now bringing this out so that they have a counter story to try and make it seem not so bad. So that when Republicans in 2018 bring up how Democrats took away the power of the vote from their own membership and that they engineered and rigged elections, it can now go back to,
oh, but that was just Hillary Clinton. That was just Debbie Wasserman Schultz. That wasn't the party. It was just those one or two people who controlled the entire party and had connections to any member of influence in the Democratic Party in the House and in the Senate. Yeah, they were just on their own.
Come on, let's not lie to each other. It's honest. Let's be honest. And this is an example of exactly what was being done at every level in the Democratic Party. Matter of fact, it's being done right now. And I have to ask again, given what I've just said, which you can look up for yourself, how can any Democrat say, especially on the national level, how can they turn around and say,
you should believe me, I have the best interest of the public in mind?
Really? because when you had the best interest, when it came to a presidential election where the public is directly involved in the voting, you lied to the public. You misled the public. You disempowered the public. You denied them the ability to make a choice. And you did this at the leadership, at the top levels of your party. Not just Debbie Wasserman Schultz, not just Donna Brazile, but the entire Senate, the entire House, the governors throughout this country. That's what the Democratic Party did. They actively decided, well, the people don't matter. They're just a bunch of zombies. They said yes, and we're going to give them stuff. But their yes means they're going to vote the way we want them to vote, period, whether they want to or not. That's kind of troubling. That's upsetting. I am upset for Democrats. I feel bad for you. I'm not a Democrat. I'm a Republican. And I thought Hillary was a horrible choice, but so was Bernie Sanders. And I thought this entire debacle, well, it was just fitting for a party that's gone so far left that they don't know what the difference is between a communist and a socialist or a Democrat. They can't, Bernie can't answer that. I don't think anyone in the Democratic Party nowadays can answer that. They don't know what the difference is because they're all the same thing. So to say that I'm watching them fall apart and stumble over each other and stab each other in the back, while as much as that would be pleasurable, the fact is I'm also upset because they're all Americans and this is our country, and people should have the choice, have clear choices that are defined by the people, not a couple of people in leadership, not by a political party and a political agenda, but by the people saying, I think this is the best choice possible given the selection I have available. And to make sure that the selection is wide enough to include choices that are real choices. At the very least, I give credit to the Democrats that they had two very, very different choices. You had the absolute communist of Bernie Sanders, and you had the absolute criminality of Hillary Clinton. It may not be a great choice. It's a pretty stupid choice, but it's a choice. Up until the fact that the Democratic National Committee and its leadership all decided that, well, it's actually, no, it's just Hillary Clinton, the criminal. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what charges are against her. Doesn't matter what she does to violate national and international law, to violate the codes and ethics of her title as her position as Secretary of State. Doesn't matter what the Clinton Foundation does and how they take money and sell U.S. uranium illegally for this. No, it doesn't. None of that matters. We've made the decision, and the zombies, who they consider to be the rank and file members, will do it anyway because they said yes. And once they said yes, they no longer have a voice. They don't count anymore. They said yes, they're done. But this is my interpretation of it. Now I'm going to take a break, and when I come back, we're going to talk about how this affects the local level, because it doesn't just stop at the presidential election. It doesn't just stop at, well, this is what happened in national politics. It's affecting you on the local level too. And guess what? The answer is exactly the same. And the question still remains. How can any Democrat, elected or candidate, stand in front of the public and have any credibility? But when I come back, I'll explain what I mean on the local level. Hello, and thank you for coming back to No Soundbites Allowed with your host, Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier. And we're going to have some fun here. So, I think I've made my case very clearly that on the national level and as a political party, the Democratic Party has really just abused its rank and file members. And that anyone who represents the Democratic Party has a long way to go to try and stand there and credibly say that they stand for the people in any way, shape, or form while we're watching them manipulate the public and engineer results that a small group of the leadership decide they want to see happen, regardless of what anyone else thinks. Regardless. You would say, well, that's just on a national level. That's just what the National Party did. And that has nothing to do with, well, my local election, my local Democrats, they're not like that. They don't do that. And that may or may not be true. I can't speak for every local community out there. I wouldn't even try. It's not even worth even attempting to do that. Let me first, and more importantly, say I'm speaking about my community, but I believe my community, Binghamton, New York, is a representation, and a pretty fair representation, of most of the nation, of a good cross-section of the nation. We may not have the exact perfect demographic breakdown. We may not have the exact perfect economic breakdown, but it is pretty close to almost anywhere in the nation, with some minor tweaking, plus minus a couple of percentage points, and suddenly you have pretty much anywhere. And most of the problems that people are facing across the nation are the very same issues that are being faced here, I believe. You may disagree. That's fine. But I can tell you that in my county, Broome County of New York, we're looking at the same issue about credibility. And I point to this year, 2017, the mayoral, 2017 Binghamton mayoral race. And what do we see there? We see exactly the same thing that happened statewide in 2016 for the Democratic primary. A decision was made before anything else happened, before the public got to be involved, and a decision was made on what was going to happen. And then they just had to go through the motions to let the public see the result. And it's very simple. I was speaking with several candidates and several individuals who were interested in the mayoral race back in February of 2017. I already knew who was going to run then, based on those conversations. It was one of two candidates, and I had spoken to both of them. And while both of them said, no, I don't think I would run, maybe I would run if someone asked me, it all depends on what happens, essentially. And I'm not going to say who I was speaking to. That was a private conversation. It was private, and I'm not going to go into it further than that. But it led me to understand who was going to be running for the mayoral race in February of 2017. And I have a lot of contact with people in every single party. I knew who some of the other people were going to be running for the race, or who were considering running for the race in all of the different parties. It was a conversation we had for many months. Now, when it came down to the actual time to actually get petitions and actually get a candidate out there, the Democratic Party, instead of announcing the two people who were the only front runners they had for the race, rather than mention either of their names, actually three people, to be fair, two men and one woman, rather than mention any of them, what they decided to do was they put up a placeholder. It's otherwise known as a bait and switch. They went and they got Timothy Griffin, who was the former Democratic, Broome County Democratic chairman in the past, and said, okay, let's put him up. And people can sign signatures for him to run for mayor, even though he publicly stated he would never, ever run. It is a position he would never take. And instead of him running, he was going to then, once people had signed the petitions and given him the power to actually run for mayor, he was going to use the loophole, which is called a vacancy committee. And people who don't do this don't deal with politics, who aren't involved in the parties. You may not know this, but every time someone runs, in case they die, which does happen from time to time, there is a group of people who get to decide who's going to take their place on the ballot and be in the election. So if Bob Smith was running for an elected office, doesn't matter what it is, he's got 5 or 6 people who are on his vacancy committee. If Bob Smith dies before the election takes place, those 5, 6 people get to pick someone and say, well, Bob was qualified to be able to run for elected office X, doesn't matter what it is. Since he died, we're going to pick Bob Smith Jr. or Sean Gonzalez, whoever, and we're going to put him in his place, and he's going to run in November based on the people who signed a petition to put Bob Smith on the ballot. Essentially, it's meant as not to handicap the public, but to ensure that since the public wanted a candidate, that a similar type of candidate would still be available for them in an election. That's the nut and bolts of it. That's the intent of it. But it can be misused in politics, as it was done by Tim Griffin and the Broome County Democratic Party, because they went in with the expressed intention that Tim was never going to run. He was never going to ever take office. And he had no intention of dying either, and he's still alive, so good for him. So instead, they were going to use his name to be able to get Democrats to get the number of signatures they needed so that he could turn around and say, I won't run, and that group of 5 or 6 people in the vacancy committee can decide, oh, well, since you're not going to run, we have these other 2 people that we were looking at having run. Neither of them is very popular. Neither of them is well received, but they can take your spot. Isn't that great? And they'll be the candidate now. So in other words, it's rigging an election. No different than what Hillary Clinton was doing against Mr. Sanders, Senator Sanders. It's denying the people a choice. It's taking that voice away from them and saying, it doesn't matter what you think. You're a zombie. You're going to say yes. Why? Because you already said yes. And we're going to give you stuff. Don't worry about it. We're the Democratic Party. We'll take care of you. Just say yes. And that's what they wanted. And they said,
just sign the petition. Just sign the petition and we'll take care of you. Don't worry about who's actually going to be in charge. That's not your problem. You're just a rank and file member of the Democratic Party. You don't get to have a choice. It doesn't matter. You said yes. We're done with you.
Now, there was a big furor about that. So at the very end, it was Mr. Tariq Abdelaziz rushed on forward and rushed on out and went back through the entire same list that had already signed for Timothy Griffin and went out and got all of them to sign for him, since they were already dedicated to making sure that a Democrat would be able to run. And he got most of those votes. Not all of them. No, yes, I hear these things. I heard about it. I have friends who are Democrats too, and I know they're in the Democratic Party. And yes, there are a lot of them actually. And yes, I know that they didn't get all of the people who voted for Timothy Griffin, who signed and gave petitions for Timothy Griffin. No, they did not all go for Tariq Abdelaziz. Matter of fact, they lost quite a few of those signatures. But that's because Tariq Abdelaziz was not a favored candidate. And I have to say, how can Tariq Abdelaziz stand in front of the people of Binghamton and say,
here I am. I'm your best choice. I am a great candidate, except I started this race under a deception.
I was a known choice by the higher-ups of the Democratic Party, and because I am not well received, because I'm a member of Citizen Action, and because of the beliefs of Citizen Action and Black Lives Matter that he supports vocally and verbally, and has done that consistently, because he has these views that don't line up with anyone else in the county except his very small, ultra progressive, ultra far left associates, then this is why they were trying to go a different route. But they took away the voice of the people. What if, and imagine this for a second, if you will, what if the Democratic Party actually took a moment and said honestly to people,
we plan on running Tariq Abdelazine, a member of Citizen Action, a member of the far left, a member of Black Lives Matter, someone who supports and believes in the idea that if you're white and you're cleaning up garbage in your neighborhood, you're a racist. We're going to support him to run for mayor.
And at the same time, it was an option that you could go out and find another Democrat who would say, but I don't believe those things. I'm a Democrat, but I don't believe people are racist for picking up garbage. I want to run for mayor. And that would have been someone not in the choice of the leadership of the Democratic Party in the Broome County. And suddenly they may not have had as much power or choice or control over this individual. And that person could have actually had a primary against Tariq so that people could have had a real choice. Instead of, the only choice they got was you could petition, I keep saying vote, it's really petition, sign a petition for either Tim Griffin, who was never going to run, and so you had no choice whatsoever. He was going to pick whomever the party wanted, which is Tariq Abdelazine, or you could sign a petition for Tariq Abdelazine. Gee, do you notice the circular action here? You can go and sign a petition for Tim Griffin, who's going to give up everything he gets to Tariq Abdelazine, or you can go for Tariq Abdelazine. Wow, what a big choice. You get Tariq or you get Tariq. Wow. And how can Tariq look in the eyes of the Democrats in Broome County and say legitimately, incredibly, I am the best choice for you because the people have picked me? No, they didn't. They didn't have a choice. You started without a choice and you ended without a choice. There was no choice in this. The decision was made back in February or March. I know this. I've heard the conversations. Democrats have told me about it already. I've known it for months. So you can't say this is brand new, shocking evidence. It was already known. There were two choices. Tariq was one of them. Okay? That's it. For half a second, there was a third choice. It was a woman. And that was thrown out almost as quickly as it came in. I knew this. I heard about it months ago. This is not new. So to stand there and stand in front of the public, to stand in front of the media and say, I was chosen by my peers. No, you weren't. The choice was you or you, period. Timothy Griffin was not a choice. Tariq Abdelazine was the only choice. The choice, you know what the real choice was? I'm a Democrat. I'm a loyal, steadfast, rank and file member of the Democratic Party, and you can choose Tariq Abdelazine or zero, nothing. That's it. You can choose him or that's it, nothing. And if you're a rank and file member of the Democratic Party who believes Democrats have the great values, which I have yet to hear, none of this is describing any great values, by the way. But if you want to believe that as a member of the rank and file, then you're going to go and say, well, I have to pick Tariq because there's no other choice available. And to choose nothing, well, that would be antithetical to your support and your loyalty to your party. And mind you, I think rank and file members of the Republican Party, the Conservative Party, the Republican Party, the Libertarian Party, I think they are the best people out there. They really move and shake mountains. They are great people. I've met them all. I've met many of them throughout the New York 22nd District, 8 counties plus, not talking about Pennsylvania and other parts of New York that I've been to and across the country as well. They're great people. They stand up, they get out there, they vote on a regular basis. God, I love them. But their party, especially for Democrats, really don't give them any respect. They really don't. And it's this example. As a presidential race, you didn't have a choice. Didn't matter what you wanted. You were going to get Hillary Clinton, regardless of what you felt was the right choice. On a local level, speaking specifically about Broome County, you didn't have a choice. You were going to get Tariq Abdelzine because that was decided for you. And ultimately, it comes back to the same thought. You said yes. I'm a Democrat. Yes. I signed my name on the dotted line, and they're going to take care of me. And for that, you gave them everything else. You gave them your you gave them your vote, and you gave them your choice. You gave up a choice. They picked it for you. You gave up your vote because they picked it for you. You only have one decision: vote or not vote. And if you're loyal enough to be in the Democratic Party and to be involved enough to sign a petition, you're already given. You're done. Your vote's already decided. And they've already counted it. And you no longer matter. That's it. You're done. How can you credibly say that you stand for anything in the Democratic Party when decisions are being made by a small elite group of individuals who do not represent the people without concern for what the people actually want? If you haven't thought about anything in this election coming up on November 7th in 2017, or any election ever, think about that. The news is out there. Donna Brazile is making the statements that were already made in 2016, and they are setting you up for 2018.
Oh, we already talked about that. You don't need to pay attention anymore. You don't have to think about the fact that you had no choice whatsoever.
You're going to hear it on the local level.
Don't worry about whether or not Timothy Griffin was going to actually give up and give the position to Tariq Abdelzine to run. Don't worry about the fact that you didn't have a choice in the mayoral race. Don't worry about the fact that we've already made decisions for you and you have no choice except to say yes. No, that's not important. We're Democrats. Vote for us anyway. And it's 2018, and we have a new batch of great people that you're going to vote for anyway. And we've already decided who those are going to be as well.
They're already figuring out who those people are that you're going to vote for. Not that you're going to have a choice on who you want to pick. They've already decided who's going to run and who you should vote for, all the way down the line. And they've already made that decision. Just like they did it from 2016 for the presidential election, just like they did in 2017 for the mayoral election, in 2018, they already have their candidates. They already know who they're going to run, and you don't have a single choice in it. How can they stand in front of you and have any credibility when they've already made a decision? When you don't matter, you're just there to cast the vote, confirm what they said, because it doesn't matter what you say. They made a decision for you. I hope this has been thought-provoking. I hope this has raised some questions for you. I hope you can see how this goes from the national all the way down to the local level. I hope this is something that you're upset about and that you want to do something about. Not to say that you don't have to be a Democrat. I'm not saying you need to be a Republican or a conservative or a libertarian. I'm not asking you to do any of that. I'm not telling you even to change your vote. All I'm asking you is be involved in your party and don't ever let them get away with something like this. You are not a zombie. I don't care if you're a Democrat, a conservative, a libertarian, or a Republican. You can vote what you believe, but make sure they understand it's not a blank vote. You're not a zombie. You have a choice. And make sure that you get to have a choice. Not just, they decided it, so it's done. But with that, I'm going to let you go. I thank you. Look forward to my next episode. With no sound bites allowed, this has been the Dragon of the Southern Tier, spouting a little bit of flame, and I hope to have you with me again in the near term. Thank you.